This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So I've been thinking about this matchup that the Cleveland Browns have with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I want to break down these kind of matchups differently than I've done in the past. I want to really focus on certain elements. And what I want to talk about today is what about this matchup with the Pittsburgh Steelers concerns me as somebody who's invested in the Browns winning this game on Monday night. And I think there is a fair bit to be concerned about on the offense-defense matchup. On the defense, Browns defense versus Pittsburgh offense matchup, I'm not super concerned about a lot of things there. But that's just my trust in this defense, given what they showed in week 1 versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, key things to note, we already know for sure Cam Hayward not playing, Deontay Johnson not playing in this game. I think they're both on IR, both going to miss 8 weeks for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is massive for them. If you don't know, Cam Hayward has been the anchor for TJ Watt basically his whole career. You look at any year where TJ Watt has these incredible sack numbers, Cam Hayward's right behind him, right? That's really been the guy that's allowed it, right? I know some people thought it was like Bud Dupree because he plays the opposite edge rusher role, but Cam Hayward is what allows that Pittsburgh pass rush to be as dominating as they are because he's such a dominant pass rusher. I think he had like 14 or 15 sacks the last couple of years in each season, and he's such a dominating pass rusher that it really doesn't allow you to do some of the magic that you would want to do to kind of stop a TJ Watt or a Highsmith or a Bud Dupree back when they had Bud Dupree. So Hayward not being in there is huge. I would also say Deontay Johnson not being in there for Pittsburgh is huge. But if I'm looking for pressure points for this Pittsburgh Steelers defense against this Browns offense, the conversation starts with that defensive line. Even without Cam Hayward, I still have my concerns about it, right? You have TJ Watt going up against a rookie in DeJuan Jones. And look, DeJuan Jones is good and TJ Watt is good, but it's still a rookie on one of the best players in football. We will see what comes out of it. But I actually think that the matchup for DeJuan against TJ is fine because what DeJuan's going to struggle with isn't the TJ Watts of the world. And if you aren't familiar, TJ Watt kind of wins with brute strength and just pure effort. So he just runs through torsos, right? Like just goes straight through your chest, just tries to push through your body. He's not really super bendy guy. You're not going to see the flashy spin moves that you see from Myles Garrett. He's just kind of he's Sam Hubbard on steroids, right? Like if Sam Hubbard were 12 times better, it's TJ Watt. And that is kind of how he wins. And I think that's going to be difficult for him to win against DeJuan Jones. So matchup wise, I actually feel like DeJuan is in a good spot because of his length and just pure size. It's going to create a little bit of an obstacle for TJ Watt. And you also have to imagine the chips are going to be there. The Browns are going to do stuff on that offensive line to make sure DeJuan has nothing to worry about, to minimize that matchup. I'm not as concerned about the right side. What I am concerned about is this left side, because as lenient as I've been on Jed Wills all summer for the last year or so, what I saw in week 1 versus the Bengals was not encouraging at all. Multiple times Jed easily lets guys get beat. You just have to say this. And I know there's a lot of people who defend Jed, a lot of people who kind of have unfairly attacked Jed over the years. But when I looked at that tape, anytime that I saw pressure, it was almost, I was instinctually looking for 71 because that's usually where the pressure came from. It was a disproportionate amount of time. He struggled versus Trey Hendrickson. I don't know what the PFF grade was. I don't really care what the PFF grade was for Jed. And I don't know I would like to know what the pass rush win rate was for him specifically, because I can't imagine it was favorable for Jed Wills. It was not a great performance. It wasn't a disaster. It wasn't that, but it wasn't what you want from Jed, right? We talked about it all summer. You want Jed to make an improvement. You want Jed to get better. You want Jed to be more consistent. You want Jed to finish his plays. You want him to live up to his potential. But I have real questions about how high that potential actually is. I've never been a Jed Wills has a super high ceiling guy. I've always thought that he was the pro ready kind of like you get him, you're going to get one of the 13 best tackles in the NFL. So far, he's been one of the 15 best tackles in the NFL. So slightly below expectations, but still a starting quality tackle. I worry about him in this combination with Deshaun Watson. I really do, because Deshaun sometimes does not do himself many favors in the pocket. He does not do a great job at times. And again, one game, we'll see if Deshaun makes those improvements, because this is something he's talked about improving. But Deshaun doesn't make left tackles' lives easier. He doesn't make his own life easier in the pocket sometimes. And Jed's not doing anything to make it easier too. Like, they're just both not working with each other well. Deshaun's doing things that's making it harder for Jed, and Jed's doing things that's making it harder for Deshaun. I hope that they're able to figure that out over this week, because if they don't, it could be a rough week for Jed Wills, because Alex Highsmith's no joke. I mean, I think he had 15 sacks, at least double-digit sacks last year. And he's a real bendy guy, real quick hands, able to get inside. That's a terrible matchup for Jed, if I'm looking at what he struggled with against Trey Hendrickson and what he's going to continue, what he struggled with his career. I don't love that matchup with him and Jed. And if he's not able to handle that in pass sets, that's going to blow up a lot of what the Browns want to do, because what the Browns are going to want to do on the offensive side of the ball versus a team like Pittsburgh that's going to run a lot of base, that's going to leave Patrick Peterson one-on-one with an Amari Cooper, with Elijah Moore. You're going to want to have time to take advantage of those matchups and have time to take advantage of that secondary. Where you beat the Pittsburgh Steelers is you throw on them. Now, again, Christian McCaffrey ran on him. Without Cam Hayward, you might just be able to run on him and call it a day. So this might all be a moot point, but that's what I'm worried about. And then maybe a little bit of DeJuan Jones. Like, I'm concerned about DeJuan Jones in the run game versus TJ Watt, because that's where DeJuan hasn't looked his best as a rookie so far throughout this offseason process. And I do worry about that a good amount there. I also worry about the impact that Minkah can have on this game, because looking at the film, I don't know whether it was the weather that made this happen or not. So until I know it wasn't the weather, I have to, assume worst case scenario to be prepared for all scenarios. So I'm not like trying to be outwardly negative or anything like that, but I am trying to bring up what I think is a valid point here. Deshaun didn't really see the field as well as I would like him to, right? There were times where he saw it fine. There were times where I thought he held on to the ball. He didn't trust something for whatever reason. He was too hesitant. I worry about that element of his struggles on Sunday being amplified with Minkah's presence being there and some of the trickeration that Mike Tomlin wants to do. Now, again, he could just light him up. I wouldn't really be surprised if Deshaun lit him up. But that on top of, I don't think he's going to have a ton of time in the pocket, kind of concerns me about Monday night. I think there are small things to be worried about when you look at this Pittsburgh Steelers matchup, right? And I'm going to talk about the things that make me confident against the Pittsburgh Steelers later this week. But first and foremost, when you want to talk about a team, when you want to prepare for a team, I think it's very important to talk about the problems you're worried that team can create and be very honest with that, because that's how you create solutions. If we just go in there, if the Browns go in there thinking, hey, we're just going to dominate them, we're not going to worry about them, then they're going to be blind to these issues that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to try to exploit. They have no chance at patching them in the game. So again, I'm not trying to be negative here. The purpose of this video is to point out possible holes on this team in this matchup versus Pittsburgh, so you can fix them and have a plan for them, right? If you're worried about Jed Wills in that matchup versus Highsmith, maybe you throw Pittsburgh off guard. And instead of rolling all this help for TJ Watt, you go, I think DeJuan can handle himself versus TJ Watt one-on-one. It sounds crazy, but I think he can do it. I think he's uniquely qualified. This is a good matchup. Not saying he's better than TJ Watt, but saying this matchup bodes in DeJuan Jones's favor. Maybe we should see if he could just hold that up and then roll all the help for Jed. Right? If we're going to chip somebody, it's going to be Jed's guy. So we could protect Jed a little bit more often. And then there's some small adjustments that you could see Jed and Deshaun making. If you want like a more in detail kind of description of what I'm talking about, check out Corey Kennan. I've had him on this show. Corey Kennan and Jake Burns did a podcast together. It's Nothing Rhymes with Orange podcast. Check that out, because in that podcast, they talk about kind of the things that Jed's doing that's not helping Deshaun, and the things that Deshaun can tell Jed to do that can help them both out. So there's a great nugget of conversation in there that I would love for all of you to check out if you have the time. And I'm always down to give great podcast recommendations for people who I think do a great job covering this team. And those two, they're bar none. They're really good. So that's my main concern, to be honest with you. If I look at the offensive side of this, I don't think Kenny Pickett does anything that overtly stresses this defense. Outside of George Pickens, and given that we have 3 good corners to throw at George Pickens, I'm not really too concerned about any wide receivers threat to man. Like maybe some of these 50-50 balls for Pickens will work. But I think Martin Emerson probably lines up well against him. You just put him there. I feel confident about that matchup. You know the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to try to move the ball horizontally. I think that's a bad idea versus this Cleveland Browns defense. The back end is so athletic and the front end is so athletic that you're just not going to have any space side to side. And even when they run the ball, they like to go sideline to sideline. I don't think a zone run scheme is going to be something that throws off this Browns team that's seen more zone run than anybody in the NFL. So I think they'll be fine there. Maybe Grant doesn't have as great as a game as he did the week before. Maybe you take advantage of that, but I don't know. I think they're going to be fine offensively. I just don't see many issues that the Steelers offense creates, structurally speaking, for this Browns team. Now, again, it's possible in any game that somebody plays so well that they completely break a game plan. I'm not saying that's not possible, but what I am saying is that, when I look at the bones of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, I look at the bones of the Browns defense, I don't see any inherent matchup issues with this team like I see on the offensive side, where I'm like, hey, that Jed Wills matchup, that's a real concern. Circle that, right? Minkah Fitzpatrick, that's a real concern for this offense, given that, it's been a while since we've seen Deshaun have a full out, no asterisk Deshaun Watson game. So until he does that, we were going to highlight the safety. We're going to make sure that that's not an issue. There are some areas in which I feel confident the Browns can attack. I will talk about that later this week, but this video is about concerns. I want to focus on that. And those are my concerns for this week versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me know what your concerns are in the comment section below. Are you concerned about DeJuan Jones and TJ Watt more than you're concerned about Alex Highsmith, Jed Wills? Are you concerned more about Joey Porter Jr. versus David Bell or somebody like that, more so than you're concerned about Minkah? Or do you think that Kenny Pickett in this offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers does pose a credible threat to some part of this Browns defense? Let me know in the comment section below. You guys have a great day. Have an even better night.